This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm really lucky today to be joined by Jackie Schafer, who is CEO and founder of Clearbrief. Jackie, nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for fitting me in because I know you're live in a conference in Miami at the moment, so this is like in between meetings. So we'll have to be efficient with our time. But look, before I dive in, I always think it's great if the guest can introduce yourself because Clearbrief is a really interesting business and it's a little bit adjacent to some of the other stuff we do. So it'd be really great to hear from you about who you are and who's Clearbrief.
Absolutely. So my name's Jackie Schafer. I'm a career litigator. So I started out in, the big law world and at a massive, firm in New York called Paul Weiss, top litigation firm, and spent a lot of my career actually in government as an assistant attorney general in Alaska and Washington State. And I was also in-house counsel for several years where I worked on, contracts, advising HR teams and managing outside litigation. And I decided I was learning about AI around 2019, 2020, and decided to found Clearbrief sort of before the latest AI craze, which has proved quite beneficial to our platform. And I can share a little bit more about what we do.
Amazing. Yeah, I'd be really interested actually to hear about the momentum of the business actually, because it's that classic thing of, I think they call it the Italian restaurant principle. Where's the best place to open an Italian restaurant next to other Italian restaurants? I would imagine that the deluge of talk about AI has led to interest in the space and therefore, but you've been in the space for a long time. So, but anyway, I'll dive into that. What was the specific kind of experience that you went through as a litigator and in-house counsel that kind of led to Clearbrief? And that might explain kind of more about what Clearbrief exactly does.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career has focused on litigation drafting. So taking this huge mess of facts and factual documents, it could be hundreds of thousands of pages, it could be insurance policies, it could be, whatever sort of the client hands us, and then turning that into a coherent story about, what happened from my client's perspective. Then, of course, you have to reference the law and ultimately produce legal writing that has citations after every sentence that tell the reader, which could be, your colleagues, could be, the GC who needs to review this, or it could, eventually it's the court. And they need to be able to track everything that I said in this document, every fact, where that can be found in the discovery. And for the law, they need to be able to obviously look and reference back the law to make sure I'm describing it and construing it accurately. So it's very tedious. It's terrible. And especially the pressure that you have with litigation deadlines makes it so that last step, especially about checking everything over for accuracy, not only is that so important for winning the case and for literally your reputation, but it has to be done. And there's a number of other tasks that you have to do just to get the thing filed. So that's where I really saw the opportunity for natural language processing and AI. It actually came up through my work when I was in-house at a $3 billion national nonprofit that was advising government agencies and courts on data science. And so I was advising the data science team. I got super into learning about that. And at the same time, I was working on a pro bono asylum case where I was representing a mom and her toddler in court, where essentially they would be deported and likely murdered, at risk of being murdered if we lost. So no pressure. We get to the final hearing and I'd written this, 50-page brief pleading where I'd referenced all those, the medical evidence, the factual information, the law. And immediately I walked in, I could tell the judge just did not like my client. He was just the way he was responding and talking to us. I'm like, oh, great. This is not good. But I was able to point him to one of the pieces of evidence that I had referenced, and he read it. And it was a declaration from the therapist or a medical, professional. And he believed that declaration. He believed that evidence because he could interact with it. And we won. And he granted them asylum. And that was kind of this aha moment for me that I've experienced many times as a litigator, where the way that you win is you get the decision maker to view the evidence and to kind of come to their own conclusion that you're right. And so what Clearbrief does is it uses AI to keep that evidence visible during the writing process, to organize that evidence in a way where there's always hyperlinked references. You can see it. And then ultimately you can share that back with the judge and win your case.
So you give me some rope here, because I'm obviously I don't work in the legal space, but it almost feels like I used to do. I did math at college, and there was sort of misconception of maths is that maths is actually a language to explain things in the simplest possible way. And really, like, it sounds to me like winning a case like that is like it's explaining the story of the case in the simplest possible way. And Clearbrief allows you to do that with the evidence, with the citations, and you're kind of leaving less room for someone creating their own story and their own narrative that's not necessarily in your favor.
Yeah, exactly. And another kind of analogy to math too is, in math, it's really about showing your work and how you got to the answer. It's not just about the answer. And, I remember sometimes getting the answer wrong, but you can get partial credit.
Yeah.
So no, it's super helpful if the judge, you're often maybe arguing for the most favorable possible position ever, but if they can see the evidence and the cases along the way that you use to reach your conclusion, they might not reach the exact conclusion, but they're going to be much closer to that. And in fact, we had an incredible story from a client recently who, shared how he used Clearbrief's hyperlinking tool to, file a brief in a way where he showed the judge the specific case that he was like, follow this reasoning, and including like the damages calculation. And he actually didn't end up hyperlinking anything else except that. He wanted the judge to see that. And the judge very unusually ruled in his client's favor. It's very difficult to win. It was a case where kids were sort of imprisoned by the government unlawfully, and absolutely he was buried in discovery, and it was, he ended up getting multi-million-dollar victory. And he was like, it's because of Clearbrief, because it showed exactly the reasoning how in this other case they reached that damages calculation. I think it's just so powerful to show and not tell.
Yeah, there's a synergy in our world as well. I mean, we're ultimately a research firm, and one of the challenges we get when people join search rather than like a traditional recruitment business is to say that the work that we do to get to the shortlist is the important stuff. It's the evidence that we've scoured the market, and you're basically driving towards a conclusion. And again, you're telling a story saying this is everybody. These are the people that aren't right. These are the people that are kind of look right, but are not interested. And then you're sort of driving to this narrative at the end, and the story is the important thing. But what I love about what you're telling me about Clearbrief is listening to you as a founder, I can just see the animation, and there's so many kind of real wins. That must add to your why of you doing this as well. Like, it's not just about bringing technology to people to win cases. There's a real, those are kind of very heartwarming stories to say, look, this is winning in the favor of the people that should win, and giving people the tools to do that.
Well, I also will say a big driving force for me is not just the clients, it's also the mental health of the legal profession. Because
really, yeah,
talk with the paralegals, when you talk with the lawyers, whether they're in-house, we do, work with a number of in-house counsel. Clearbrief, I should add, we're already used across the largest global law firms. We're used by boutique firms. We are used by courts and government agencies, but the area where we're growing very quickly right now is in-house counsel, including, folks who work on insurance issues, insurance claims. And it's just a very, very stressful role where there's so many, cases flying at you, and your supervisors are going to be checking everything over. And if you make a mistake, you're, excoriated. And it's just very stressful. And so what Clearbrief does is it's like this kind of second set of eyes in Microsoft Word that's showing you, how to do your job more quickly. It's showing you the evidence. It's organizing it into hyperlinked chronologies, as an example. So just to describe a little bit, like, let's say I get dumped this huge claims file and my supervisor's like, I need to know, what our exposure is here. And you have 20 files like this, right? That you have to get through. You can drag those source documents into Clearbrief. It's a Microsoft Word add-in. Clearbrief will organize that with a click of a button into a chronology where it will tell you the date, what happened on that date, and a link to the source that's hyperlinked. And it's been custom trained as well on medical records. It works really great for all different types of cases and claims. And then I can just very quickly see what the heck happened. Then you can press another button. I can edit everything in Microsoft Word like I normally would, and it will turn that into the format of a claims assessment or a report for my supervisor in the format that I need it, with those hyperlinks. So that my supervisor now, when I send it to them, they don't just have to trust me when I'm like, there's no coverage for this incident. Here's the policy. They will be able to click and look at the policy and give it their own thought and come back and say, actually, I think we should adjust this because I do see a way it could be covered. And it ends up being more accurate, less, exposure that down the line someone blames that initial claims reviewer for missing something or making a mistake. And it kind of documents and covers the whole thinking analysis when the higher up decision makers need to go back and look at what happened. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think I told you I used to work in claims, and the funny thing is, I was thinking about this from two perspectives. Is one, you're obviously improving accuracy of decisions and decision making, but the other thing is that I was thinking that it's from a talent perspective, and you mentioned mental health. There's the stress side of it. There's just all the mundanity of it. This is not interesting work. No one becomes a lawyer to do this. Really. Everyone. I presume I didn't go into law, but I can imagine everyone goes into law thinking they're going to be swashbuckling it around a court, not really like sitting there doing citations and putting in chronological order. So it's taking that kind of less enjoyable part of a role away, and it's giving tools to people to not only be more effective, but probably enjoy work a little bit more. I mean, this is take some of that away. I wanted to jump in and thank you for bringing it back to insurance, because that was my job to do that as the host, but you've done that for me very well. But you are working with lots of kind of very different types of businesses, and some really big major firms as well. Like I know Microsoft's legal team as well. Why do you think they've been so comfortable working with? It's still a relatively young company, but you're in there, you're embedded in these businesses already. What is it that you can potentially do that other competitors can't? That's allowed them to kind of adopt so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. For sure, it was not an easy process at all to work with these large global companies as a startup. The most important piece, I think, to start with is security. You have to be able to meet the strictest security requirements. And I think it was because I was a lawyer, from day one, and I knew if we are going to work with this type of clientele, including law firms, we had to build an architecture that could withstand, scrutiny there. So we're SOC 2, Type 2 certified. We have extensive, security reviews before we even get to the discussion of, piloting and implementing. So these companies we really give them a chance to pilot the tool before purchasing it. And we work really closely with them so that, we have out of the box, a really comprehensive tool set that can take you all the way from a blank page to you're filing something with the court, or with, you're sharing something with a client or the board, or, so we focus them on what workflows is your company going to, use the most inside Clearbrief. We have our tool set includes a lot of what I'm calling classic AI, like semantic search and natural language processing. And, but it also has a curated set of generative AI tools. And I think that's another draw that we're seeing is a lot of companies are not comfortable with just these totally open-ended chatbot type generative AI tools that are like, what do you want to do today? It's just too open-ended. A lot of people, they don't want to become prompt engineers. That's just not in everybody's wheelhouse. So we've taken the approach of, we're not the Cheesecake Factory where every single thing in the world is on the menu. We have a curated set of generative AI workflows that we know that folks who work on insurance claims will use. We know that this is what they are doing in their day to day, and we've already sorted it for them. So it will work the way they expect, and the output will be something that they expect. So that's been really important. And then, of course, we refine it. We talk to them and try to learn about what, specific quirks they have in their own internal workflows. We create videos for them. We have a really amazing customer success team that listens really closely.
Yeah, that listening part. Because I think that's what was really clear to me when we first spoke, and we talked about Clearbrief, and you explained it to me. I'm sitting there going, "Oh, there's an application here. I can think of an application there." But what I've loved about it's like, no, we know the lane we want to play in, and it's not trying to be all things to all people. And it doesn't mean that the product can't expand. I mean, that's a great thing that you can, but it's that. I do see the temptation, and I also understand the temptation. Venture-backed businesses or early-stage businesses, that every time you get feedback, I always wonder how resilient I would be in not constantly evolving my product to suit this new customer. And I think that's a real challenge. Are there any misconceptions about what the tool does that kind of commonly come up that you or maybe concerns that people have? Because particularly when you're talking about law, obviously you've got the security aspect, but yeah, are there kind of misconceptions or concerns that kind of come up that are quite common?
Yeah, absolutely. So, our customers are lawyers and, legal departments, or even in the claims world, there's always a lawyer in the mix somewhere. And what they'll say is, we heard about those cases where AI is hallucinating and creating up fake cases. So this can't be a good product, or it's not good enough. It's not accurate enough to be used with law, for legal use cases. And so that's really where Clearbrief shines. We integrate with LexisNexis for legal content, as well as Fastcase VLEX and a number of other publicly available sources and databases, so that anytime there's a law or regulation reference, Clearbrief's AI automatically displays that inside Word. And that is a huge, help in automatically spotting whether something is a fake case. If it's a fake case, Clearbrief will still detect that it's trying to reference something made up, and it will spotlight that and say, hey, we couldn't find this. If it's real, go ahead and upload it and we can display it. But so we've built this into the functionality of the tool, that it knows that there's a risk. Maybe people are using other, ChatGPT type things, and then they can check it over using Clearbrief. Another aspect, though, is the way that we've designed the tool so that it's in Microsoft Word. A lot of other sort of chatbot type, if anyone's used ChatGPT, for example, even if you upload things into it, it will spit stuff out. Sometimes it might give you citations, but it will give you things that you have to then open in a different platform like Word. And there's no very simple way to check over those citations, even if it gives you them. That would require a few more steps. And in the day-to-day of most professionals, we just might not take the time to manually go and check. Clearbrief is solving that because it's in Word. When it generates something, every citation is hyperlinked. So you just click and you can view it inside Microsoft Word. It splits the screen. And it even highlights in blue, highlighting in your document where to draw your eyes so that it makes it simple and real to check it over. And it's almost like you can't avoid laying your eyes on this. So those are some of the ways that we've overcome objections to people who have said, I've never seen an AI tool that seemed good or interesting to me. And when I saw this, I thought I could use that. That's a quote I heard quite recently. I had the honor of presenting to the National Conference of Chief Justices recently. So it was amazing. It was a room at a conference with all of the leadership of the state courts, across the country. And they were quite skeptical, of course, about AI. And it was amazing to present it to them and show them that it can be trustworthy. It just has to be designed in the right way, and it has to be presented with a user interface that makes it simple to check over.
I think some of the horror stories coming out, there was quite a lot of horror stories about the use of AI in law more broadly, wasn't there? Because I think there was a case. In fact, we had a legal tech company on, Kennedy's IQ business, and I think they were telling us about there was a case where a lawyer had basically been lazy and used ChatGPT to write this entire case. and then it made up these kind of like phantom citations, and I think that was so like, I don't even know if that's true, whether that's just some like myth that's gone around, but that was really on the ChatGPT explosion. So yeah, I can understand the skepticism around that, but as we're saying, it's like you're solving a very specific issue in a very specific way, and it's fitting into the way that people work. You're not asking them to go onto a system. You're saying this sits within Word, it works within Word. So I can see why you've managed to get such sort of heavy level of adoption. But as you're expanding globally, and maybe let's talk about that, because the challenge is there: different legal systems, different legal environments. It's hard enough in the US. You've got different legislation from different parts of the country. One, I suppose, how do you cope with that? And secondly, globally, do people use it in a different way? Have you spotted any trends about how people kind of utilize the tool?
Yeah. So we are now being used by some of the largest firms in the UK, in Ireland. We've actually been in Ireland for the last couple of years, and as well as Canada. And we integrate with legal sources in those countries and or jurisdictions. And the ways that it's pretty much the same, I would say. What's interesting is in the law, we're an insurance where we have to say these are the facts. This is what happened. We're all doing the same thing, which is taking that huge pile of documents and telling a story out of it, and making sure it's accurate and that the writing that I'm doing corresponds with the writing in that source document. So that's what the problem that Clearbrief solves, which is quite universal. We have made a number of customizations though for the international market in terms of just language, actually, certain phrasing that is used in different countries, and of course the case law repositories, as I mentioned. But the UI of the product, we've changed a bit. For example, there's a tool in the US that will do an instant, in the US we call it a declaration. So if I have a witness, I can take my interview notes, even if I hand wrote them, drag them into Clearbrief. Clearbrief will create a perfectly formatted declaration with hyperlinks so I can verify against what the witness said in the notes. In the UK, there's a similar tool. It's called a witness statement, but it's a little bit different in that the writing has to exactly match what the witness said in the UK. In the US, there's a little more leeway for creativity. And it has to be formatted in a certain different way. So the way we've approached it is really working with our customers, like I said before, to say, okay, this you like the output. How can we make it so that it takes even less work for you to turn it into a finished product? And that's been our approach. But overall, it's very fascinating to see. I mean, the US is based on the common law system, so there's so many similarities.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, I only come a cropper when I'm trying to write the contract for my US clients and my UK clients, and trying to get your head around the language. It is the use of language more than anything else. I'm really conscious of time. I know that you need to go, so I'd love to hear more about the market expansion. But look, I think Clearbrief's fascinating. Is there any product development on the horizon? But I'm conscious that you need to be a brief answer for because you've got to go.
No, there is absolutely. We are doing so much innovation, especially in the insurance space and in the in-house legal team space. We have incredible partners. You mentioned, Microsoft's legal team as one. I will say there's just a lot more coming this year, including the ability to sort of swap out, customized models, and so much more that I can't I can't summarize it that quickly. But I will say the way to, stay in touch with us, if you go to our website and sign up, I do personally write, I don't even use AI for it, a newsletter every month where I talk about sort of the latest tools, developments in AI and that sort of thing. So if you go to clearbrief.com or clearbrief.ai, you can sign up. You can also download Clearbrief from the Microsoft App Store and test it out yourself if you'd like.
Amazing. We'll put those links in the show notes. Jackie, I know you've got to go, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast, and I hope to speak to you very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.